The date is October 15th, 2011. We are at the Military Museums in Calgary. We are interviewing Clem Gerwing, and the interviewers are museum volunteers Karen Cooner and James Baldwin. Also with us is Michelle Gerwing, who is a cousin, a family cousin to Clement. So Clem, could you give us your full name and your service number and where you served, your unit that you served with?
My baptismal name is Clemens Fridolin Gerwing, and my commission number is J24898, and I joined in July the 15th, 1941, only to be a pilot. And of course, when you get to the place, you have to bring your report card. And when I started in high school, they said you should have an extra language. So they told me what I could take. I could take Latin, and I wasn't cut out to be a priest, so I was, what else? French? No. Spanish? German. And that's just when Hitler was getting a lot of publicity. I said, I'm going to take German. So my grade 12 German, I had 98%. So when I went into the interview in Saskatchewan, they wanted to be a pilot, and they said, well, your German is so good, you should go in intelligence. And I said, do they fly in intelligence? And he said, no, you listen to German broadcasts and stuff. I said, well, then I guess I have to go to England to join up. No, you don't have to do that. But if I'd have gone in intelligence, they'd have probably kicked me out of an airplane in the middle of the night over Germany, and
Clem,
if they caught you,
Clem, when were you born, and what age did you enlist at?
I was born on February the 24th, 1920. And I enlisted July the 15th, 1941. I had already an older brother and an older sister had joined, and we had quite a big farm. Somebody had to do the work. Then I had younger brothers, Felix and Charlie, they took over.
Can you tell us something about your training in Canada, your air training?
Yeah, I was quite lucky. I started out in Brandon, Manitoba, elementary flying, on Tiger Moths. And while we were there, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Just about the time we were finished with our elementary flying. And luckily, I was posted to go to Uplands Airport in Ottawa on the Harvards. And it was quite a break for me, because that's what I wanted to do. So I often wondered, how do they make the selection, whether you go multi-engine or single-engine? And a guy told me one time, in fact it was my neighbor, Fowler, Bill Fowler. He says, remember one time when you went in for medical and the guy had you cross your leg like this here, and then they hit you with a mallet here. Very scientific. And I just about kicked the guy's head off. He says, well, you're going singles, because I had good reflexes. That's how come they, I don't know if it's true or not, but probably was.
So after you did your training, and when did you get your wings, and where did you get them at?
It was in March of '42. in Ottawa.
And then where were you posted after that? Where did they send you?
Well, this is very strange. So then we were given 2 weeks holidays, embarkation leave or whatever they called it, and told to report to Halifax. We didn't have OTU, operational training or anything. And so we were sitting here in Halifax waiting to get on a boat to go to England. And one day they didn't, it was supposed to be at the roll call in the morning. Anybody's name wasn't called to report to the adjutant. So I went in there, gave him my name, Gerwing. Oh yeah, he says, you're going to Sydney, Nova Scotia. I said, the hell I am, I'm going to England. He says, here are your train and meal tickets to Sydney. So I got to Sydney, and nobody knew what I was doing there. I was a sergeant pilot at that time. And went to the mess. A couple of days later, some more guys showed up, all sergeant pilots. And pretty soon they sent a guy from the Battle of Britain over. He's from Rosetown, Saskatchewan. I can't remember his name, but he was our CO. He's probably there in the logbook from Torbay. And they brought in the airframes from Thunder Bay, Hurricane, and the logbooks for the Rolls-Royce engines were from England, and some of them had been fished out of the English Channel. Anyway, they put them together and had two-stage, the pitch, full fine or full course. And this squadron leader was going to show us how to fly the Hurricane, because we'd flown the Harvards, the AT-6 of the Harvard. And so he's taking off, and as he's going down the runway, just as he lifted off, one of the panels flew off of the side. And, oh my God, it's going to crash. But anyway, he brought it around and landed. But the aircrew guys, they hadn't fastened something quite right. Anyway, it fell off. But then we didn't take long at all. We were all learned how to fly the Hurricane. And I was there almost a year. We were there to protect the East Coast, because they were afraid the Germans were going to put some decks on freighters or something and bomb Gander, which was a big staging post for bombers to fly to England, St. John's, Halifax. We were posted to Torbay from after we got proficient in the Hurricane, and Torbay, Newfoundland, just out of St. John's. And we were the 125 squadron. Then they formed 126, which went to Gander. And the third one was in Dartmouth. And then there was another one in the south part of the Nova Scotia, Yarmouth. After that, they formed 4 on the west coast. And I think they flew Tomahawks or Kitty Hawks. And we flew the Hurricane. And all we had was 303 ammunition. And they would send us to meet convoys.
So how were you armed? Did you have like 6 303 machine guns? Do you remember?
A hell of a lot of machine guns on there, but they're all 303. Yeah. And we're supposed to look for German subs, because they were sinking ships right, left, and center at that time. And we could have never seen one anyway to chop him out. You're too busy flying, and how can you spot a submarine? I suppose it really would have been on the surface we could have, but they were all periscope. And even if we'd have caught one, you would have never done anything with the 303 ammunition. But they said the Germans don't know that, they would stay down. And we would stay with the convoys maybe half an hour. Might be 75, 100 miles out over the Atlantic. And then somebody else would, some of our other guys from the squadron would come, and you had to remember the letter of the day, because you had to acknowledge. Otherwise, even though we were on the other side of the Atlantic, they would shoot you out of the sky.
So how many do you recall in an average patrol? Are you in partners? Are you single? Are you in, how many aircraft are together when you're doing your patrol?
Usually two.
Usually two? Okay. And what you're saying there is you had to communicate with the ships, the call signs, or otherwise they would start to shoot at you. Yeah.
With a light.
Yeah.
We had to know the Morse code.
So it wasn't by radio, it was by Morse code light. Okay. And did you ever see any wreckage or any ships sunk?
No. I saw lots in St. John's Harbor that had the front end blown off and big holes in there, but never. In fact, one time I was out on a patrol and there was one ship all by itself. Big ship. And I got close to it, and it said, and I didn't recognize the language, but it said Frieden Sverige. Must have been Free Sweden or something. I can remember. But it was all alone. It was a neutral country, so I guess they were quite safe.
Do you ever recall any accidents, or was there loss of life by either in training or during those operations? Did you ever have any accidents? Anybody in your squadron have accidents or die? Or
Well, when we first started out in elementary flying, there was a Vic Horseman from Indian Head and Bob. Anyway, there were three of us. We got very good friends. And in Vic Horseman was colorblind, so he got washed out. And Bob Greer was his name. And if you read the story of Doc Siemens, he mentions Bob Greer. In fact, Siemens and I were at the same time in elementary flying in Virden, Manitoba.
Oh, you trained together.
I didn't know him.
Isn't that something?
Doc Siemens.
yeah. So did anyone die in that?
He spun in, killed him. So here all of a sudden, out of the three, was I'm the only guy left. Pretty. It shook me up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was in about a week.
So you said you were in the Hurricanes for about a year approximately. Were you doing those patrols?
From March of '42, I think, to April, I forget. But then anyway, we went from Sydney, Nova Scotia to Torbay, Newfoundland. And then the deal was the first guy in was supposed to be the first guy to go overseas. It turned out I was the second guy to go because there was one guy they wanted to get rid of. His name was Bob Hayes. So he was number one. He got first. And I was second.
And then how did you get overseas? You're going to England now? Are you going to go to England?
And they got over to England, and that was in 43, and there wasn't very much going on, but except North Africa. So here they were asking for volunteers to go overseas. And you often heard the expression, you should never volunteer. Anyway, we were 6 of us, stupid Canadian raised our heads, and we volunteered. We thought North Africa. So he ended up going to, I think it was Gaelic, Scotland, where the convoys would form up. And it was a huge convoy, battleships, destroyers, and we were on the New Zealand boat, the Rangitata. And we thought, well, the Germans are sinking everything in the Mediterranean, so we'll be going around the other way to Egypt. So we got to South Africa, Durban, and then we kicked off the boat because it was going to New Zealand to get another load of mutton, I guess, to take to England. It was that's what they said, it was a refrigeration ship. And so we got on a different ship, and we were about a day out of Durban when the captain says our next port of call is Bombay. Hell, that's on the other side of the world. I mean, that's further than Egypt. But anyway, we got off the boat in Bombay, and from Pune, that's where everybody went to get posted, I guess. And my squadron, 17, had just got kicked out of Singapore not too long before. They had been flying the Buffalo aircraft, and they got massacred by the Japanese. But anyway, they were refitting in Colombo. That's where I joined them.
Glenn, can I just stop you for a second and go back to England? Did you fly any operations out of England then at all? Okay.
Well, I mentioned there wasn't too much going on, but they'd asked for volunteers for overseas, and they didn't tell us where. We assumed it was North Africa.
And on your ship travel from England to Bombay, did you ever encounter any presence of enemy? Like, was there any warnings of?
We were Freetown, Sierra Leone, and we were on this ship, the Rangitata, and they must have had lousy bearings in their engine because they Babbitt or something in one engine. They had to go into Sierra Leone. We had to leave the convoy, so 2 destroyers went with us because we were a big passenger freighter, the Rangitata. And as we were heading for Freetown, there was a German Focke-Wulf Condor circling, telling the subs, there's a big ship limping into Freetown Harbor, get over, sink them. And every once in a while the destroyers would fire off, but the German plane was so far away. It was a big 4-engine Focke-Wulf Condor.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got into Freetown, and they flew in repairs. Next morning, full bore, I guess the convoy must have slowed up because in a very short time we caught up and then formed up. But when we were in England, all the aircrew people went to Bournemouth. That was a staging area for And the first Sunday we were there was an American guy that joined the Canadian Air Force, and myself, we took our mattresses that were on the second story in this big hotel right on the Channel Coast, Bournemouth. And all of a sudden, the air raid siren. This is our first day in England, the air raid siren. And Al had already taken his shirt off and was lying on his mattress. It was a nice warm day in April. And I was hoping there was going to be some action. And all of a sudden I let out a hell of a howl, you know, it looked like 1,000 airplanes coming just over the water. You know, Bournemouth, and then over to the east is a place called Christchurch. And at Christchurch, there were 2 squadrons of Focke-Wulf 190s. And there they went like this here, and they fanned out 24 across, right over Bournemouth. And one was heading straight for us. And when I saw the flashes in the wings, and some of the planes had bombs dropping off, they killed about 800 people in Bournemouth that time.
Oh.
And anyway, I kept waiting for this bomb to hit our hotel because this guy was coming right for us. We got to the place outside, and somebody said there was a plane shot down just a block east of us. Here, there was a Focke-Wulf crashed into this big house, killed a lady in there. And so we went over there, a couple of us, and one of the Canadians climbed onto the wing. He was sort of in and out, half in it was a big house, and reached in and took the guy's wristwatch. They had beautiful wristwatches, the Germans. I don't know who it was. But anyway, I went to the back of the yard, and in English, there was debris there, and there was one of his tires from this airplane. And in English, it said the Dunlop Tire and Rubber Company.
You're
I said,
kidding.
what the hell is that doing on a German airplane? So whilst we were milling around there, the home guard or bomb disposal guys came, and you should have heard. I wish I'd had it on tape. He called us all their names of stupid colonials and all. There's a bomb in there. He still had his bomb, this guy. So everybody there was gone in no time flat.
Just to clarify, do you think the tire was it like the main tire? Was it a tail wheel tire?
They had stockpiled from the tire was made by the Dunlop Tire and Rubber.
And it was the 2 big tires for the aircraft, was it, or was it a tail?
They weren't very big. If you see that Seafire,
Yeah.
very much like that,
Okay.
the tires. But that puzzled me for a long time in English. But they bought stuff from wherever, stockpiled it, I suppose.
So I'm going to want to take you back to. Is there any other thing in England? Because those are good description things for conditions in England. Do you have anything else about that or the voyage? About going to India? Is there anything else?
These, I forget the day that when we were on the squadron in Burma, and we were what they called strategic. We hardly ever saw Japanese. Sometimes we'd see them up there, and they would try and entice us to fly and come up, and, and they could bounce us, but we were always escorting or had ground targets. So we never did meet Japanese airplane.
Okay.
But we got lots of sampans, trucks. I remember one night we were patrolling close to the front and just thought we'd make one more. It's getting dark and we had no lights in our jungle strips. It was all black. So we thought we'd do one more sweep past the bunch of trees around. And all of a sudden here's a truck right in front of me with a bunch of gas barrels. I guess he's going to refuel a bunch of tanks. And there was a guy standing there, and he must have noticed that. I remember him pounding on the cab, and just then we blew him up. The barrels were all loaded with gas, I guess, and everything exploded. That's the kind of work we did.
Can I take you back, Lynn, so maybe if we go to where you arrived in Bombay, and then you said you went to, was it Pune? And then could you tell, like, maybe just then what the next step and what happened from there?
Well, from Pune, we weren't there too long, and what I remember was it was a very nice, I think the altitude was probably higher. And anyway, they had Mahatma Gandhi incarcerated in that palace right there. And day and night, we were not too far from there. Day and night, there'd be thousands of people milling around this place. Gandhiji, Gandhiji. We were so glad to get out of there. And, the thousands, you know, you can't imagine the amount of people in that. We couldn't anyway.
Did the British have guards, or were there Indian guards, or did you see any?
We had guards at the bases, but they didn't seem to be too worried about it. Was all, they weren't violent people. I never felt unsafe. And the one time I saw your map here, if you look at Mandalay, and there's the Moo River, Swebo, you ever heard of those places?
Yep.
In the Moo
Yep.
River? The day they shot down two of our Canadian transports. There were two green guys on our squadron, and I'd just come back from the long patrol. And these two guys were on readiness, and the radar picked up or something, and the Japs had shot down these, it must have been a radio report or something. So they scrambled, these two guys, and they were just green. They had just joined the squadron. So I asked the guys if that other airplane, it was all okay. So I jumped in it, and the three of us took off, gonna cut these guys off before they got back to Rangoon. And we stayed on the ground, through the gate, just going like bad out of hell. And all of a sudden the motor stopped. And we still think it was a lucky shot to knock the gas line off, just like that. So I pulled it up. I got, I think we were going close to 450 miles an hour because we were through the gate. And I got up to about 1,000 feet, and I blew off the canopy and did my seat harness, going to bail out, but all these trees. So I said, I'm going to get hung up there and starve to death. I might as well ride this thing down. And I don't know how in the hell I found this spot. It was probably the only place in Burma where, on the Moo River, that was after the monsoon. So there was a sandbank. And I put the thing, kept the wheels up, did a perfect landing on the sandbank, blew my IFF equipment, and there was guy came, I stood there in a state of shock because what the hell, what's going on here? All of a sudden there's a guy come walking towards me and he's carrying a Tommy gun. We had the Smith & Wesson, and you wouldn't believe it, we had dumb-down bullets. That's all we had. And this guy, I thought for sure he was a Jap, the native Burmese guy. And I sort of went to my revolver, and the guy said, "Friend," in English. He'd just been reinstated the day before as the guy in charge of that area. And he fixed me up. The natives around there, they gave me stuff to eat. And he fixed me up with an ox cart to take me north. And I had, because I'd undone my seat harness, I kind of slid, bloodied my knees a bit. Because Spitfire is not built for that kind of landing. And in the morning we got to this forward American casualty evacuation center. And after riding, well, in the middle of the night, there was an awful commotion. And I thought, this driver is selling me to the Japs or something. But his oxen were so tired, he was just making a deal with the other guy, because we give him a money belt, eh? Everybody had a money belt. And they were just deciding how much. And so he took me the rest of the way. And we got to a casualty evacuation center. They dressed my lacerations, gave me morphine, breakfast. I woke up a couple hours later feeling just 100%. They flew me back to my old base. The next day I was up flying and looking down, see my old airplane down there, wondering how in the hell could I find that spot in all of that rugged area.
Do you remember the name of that base that you were flying out of then, Clem? The name of that base, do you remember?
It would be in there someplace.
We can, that's okay, we can find it in the logbook. Yeah, we can look that up, okay. And we can, at the end, when we go through, we can point that out. That would be good.
It was just northwest of Mandalay.
Oh, okay. The other thing I've read where they, did you carry a card with you that would say anything in different languages to the Burmese if you were shot down or forced down? Do you remember if you ever had a card?
We had stuff that, I don't know whether particularly, whether I remember. I remember the money belt.
Do you know how much it would have been, roughly? Was it paper money or coins?
It was all paper money.
All paper money? Okay.
Yeah, and if they brought you back, they would get double it. You know, they always knew that there was another payment, so that they wouldn't get rid of you somehow along the line.
So if we can go, so when you arrive in Bombay, and when do you get, do you go to a squadron right away and then they move you towards Burma? Or do you remember what happened after, like how do you get over to towards Burma in that area?
Well, we got to Pune, and then as I mentioned, I was posted to Colombo, the airport in Colombo, Ceylon, and joined 17 Squadron, and they were flying Hurricanes. They had been fitted with Buffalo, I think it was called a Buffalo,
yep.
And of course the Japanese massacred in Singapore, and it was still flying, and I think we had two 20 millimeter cannon in each wing. In that. But we weren't there too long, and they converted us to the Mark 8 Spitfire. And once I got into the Spitfire, I knew I had a good chance of surviving. That was a beautiful airplane to fly.
So could you talk about the types of missions? You said before could you do could you describe maybe a strafing mission, or were you doing ground attack? Can you remember any ground attack missions? You gave us one where you blew up the truck with the gasoline. Can you remember any other types of targets that you would have had that you attacked on the ground?
If you go south in Burma, there's a place called the Chalk oil fields. And we used to, if we escorted usually medium bombers, not the big heavy ones, but the light medium American bomber.
Like a B-25 Mitchell or something?
Well, Havocs.
Havocs? Okay.
Boston Havocs,
Yeah.
I think, or Baltimore's, two motored, they were called meteor. And we would escort them on bombing missions. And on the way back, we would fly over the chalk oil fields and blast away at we usually start a fire or two, and quite often over Mandalay, the Japanese had very heavily defended, and we would always fly at different altitudes and different speeds over Mandalay because they would fire what do you call it? Three big black puffs.
Oh, anti-aircraft flak,
Anti-aircraft.
like flak, or yeah.
And they never got close as long as you kept changing your speeds and height. At one time, there was a Canadian guy, Scotty Getler, he was on our squadron, and he came and it was as white as that sheet. He had kind of lackadaisically flown over, and one of these went off right underneath his airplane. He said he wouldn't believe it. He says, "Oh, all of a sudden I'm upside down." And he had a few little nicks in the bottom of his wing. But that put an end to that because we used to enjoy ourselves.
Did you used to attack anything on water? Did you used to attack anything on water that was like boats or ships?
Sampans on the Irrawaddy. When we started our big push, General Slim was the guy in charge of the 14th Army. And they had the Japanese, the Irrawaddy comes down like this here and then makes a big bend like this here. And there were, I don't know how many thousand Japanese troops penned in, they couldn't get across the river. So we were like crop spears. I think, I don't know how many trips I flew that day, but you would strafe back and forth. The General Slim sent notice over that they didn't lose one guy crossing the Irrawaddy because we nailed them all in there. We couldn't see what we were doing, but we just kept going back and forth.
Do you remember any time when you did have radio communication from the ground? Did they ever try to signal you from the ground with smoke or signs or radio? Do you ever remember that?
Well, we had, right towards the end, we did have radar. And that's how come they vectored us onto these Japs, but they'd gotten away anyway. But it wasn't too conducive for radio with all the hills around there. I can remember one time, probably the diciest trip I had to climb through 33,000 feet of cloud to get above the cloud base. And then, because they had radar at the base, they talked us one after the other down to land.
Wow.
That was a,
Do you remember what base that was? Cliff? Was that a jungle base or one of the main ones?
in there someplace.
That's okay. No, that's all right if you don't.
It goes up in the Infall area.
Yeah, Imphal, right?
Probably Infall Valley.
Yes. So, do you remember? Well, you said you were flying out of Infall. Do you remember? Did you support a lot of the infantry when the Japanese are attacking Infall? Were you there then?
In fact, we had the only place that we still controlled was the Infall Valley. The Japs had us surrounded. And they would dismantle their anti-aircraft guns, carry them up in the hills, and fire off these rounds at us. They knew where we were at night. And it was always because there's cobras there, and you would hear these things coming, or some of them go off, you would dive for your slit trench. It was right beside your cot. But you never knew if there was a cobra in there to meet you. It was hell. And sometimes we'd stand out there and look for the flash. And early next morning we'd make a beeline and blast away at that area. Maybe we did get the odd one.
So you mentioned cobras. Was there other insects or animals that you had to watch out for?
We didn't really. Cobras were the ones that I remember because they were deadly. If you got bit by a cobra, there wasn't much time left for you.
So did you ever, so you did some ground attack missions. Did you do escorting missions where you said you escorted bombers, right? And then did you do any ones where you went after, say, enemy fighters, or what was the status of Japanese fighters and those tactics
Well,
that you
I
would have been
mentioned before,
doing?
we never once ran into Japanese opposition airplanes. We would see them way off, and they would wiggle around, try and get our attention, get some greenhorn to go up, but we had our mission to, we had to stick with what we were doing. Ginger Lacey did happen to get one Jap, but we didn't see too many. And it was mostly ground
support. Yep. Ground attack and ground attack where you're attacking the ground. Could you talk a little bit about the famous Ginger Lacey? Could you talk about anything you remember about Ginger Lacey? Because he's going to be your squadron. How long would he have been your squadron leader?
Well, we was there almost a year, I guess.
Okay.
He was, well, of course, he was the top pilot in the Battle of Britain. And I don't know, he was a bit of a flake. He never got, he didn't like the group captain too much. The group captain was a guy that had been in the Olympics. And in his book, I think it was in his book, he told us, if you catch that SOB over Burma, shoot him down. Did you read the book? Do you remember that? But he would tell us. I don't think he dared put it in the book because, anyway, they didn't get along very good. But he told us, shoot the bastard.
Yeah. Did you ever fly directly with him, with Ginger Lacey?
With Ginger?
Yeah.
I can't remember. He had his own number too. I was usually in charge of the section, but we hardly ever flew as a squadron. Mostly 2 or 4. At the end, it was the Finger 4 became very popular rather than line astern and stuff. So Ginger Lacey, he was our squadron leader, but drank a lot of gin.
So you're usually flying in partners, twos or fours. Is that what you're saying on your missions? Okay.
Well, you talk about our targets. One time we got a report, this was kind of late, that there was a train still operating between Mandalay and Namio that was in across, just on the Chinese border. And that's where the Japanese had an R&R place for their troops. Found out later that they had a lot of Korean women buggers. Anyway, it was still operating. So I remember going to Ginger Lacey and say, I got an idea how we can get this train. So he had me explain it. I said, like I had a New Zealander, Flight Sergeant Holland was my number 2. And I said, because we're always out for jungle strip, I said, I want a guy at the end of the runway with 2 flashlights in case one goes dead. And we take off in the dark. And we have to have we had belly tanks too that you could use. And we had to put a belly tank on because we were going quite a ways past Mandalay. And, so we started heading east, getting daylight, getting a little pink, and there was a bit of a haze. And all of a sudden you saw steam. So I pointed to my number, down there, and yeah, sure. So we got closer and closer, and I got underneath the haze. He's trying to hide. They usually in the daylight they would hide the train under the trees. We caught the son of a gun, and when we first went in, I don't remember how many cars there were, but there were a lot of these bullets that you could see them come.
A tracer? Like
Tracer
a tracer?
bullets.
Yeah.
So instead of going for the boiler, it was a steam engine. Instead of going for the boiler, then we switched to the 50 caliber. We had 4 50 caliber machine guns, and we raked it from the engine, and you could see guys falling off of the boxcars. So we could get a real quick turn and came in, and with our 20 millimeters, we cracked the boiler. So that was, we think it was the last train in Burma.
Clement, do you ever recall using bombs for any of the missions? Bombs, like 500-pound bombs or any? Did you ever never drop bombs? Okay.
We had rockets.
Oh.
Rockets.
And what types? When did you use those? When did you use the rockets?
Well, when we attacked tanks or sampans, we do a better job than the 20 millimeter.
The guys that the pilots you're flying with now, this is an RAF squadron you're in. What is the mixture of Canadians and Brits, and could you?
It's about, you saw I think there were usually about 6 Canadians, 6 Australians, 4 New Zealanders. There'd be the odd Rhodesian. We even had a guy from Ceylon, and the odd Englishman. Mostly Commonwealth. It wasn't RAF Squadron, but
Did you ever work with Schulemson?
pardon?
Did you ever work with Schulemson, Canadian pilot who pioneered a lot of the rocket theories and in downing ships? The name doesn't sound familiar. Schulemson.
Yeah, he was more in the European theater though. His name was Schulenson. Schulenson. Actually, there's something in here in the museum.
Sid Schulemson, I
Yeah,
believe
there's
his
something
name
in
is.
here in the museum. You could look at him, but we just didn't know whether you had ever met him. He's another Canadian. Yeah.
And he pioneered the rocket technology and later taught other pilots how to use rockets to down ships. And I was just curious to know if he had ever mentored you.
Was he in the Navy? Was
The
he a Navy
RCAF.
pilot?
RCAF. No, he wasn't a Navy pilot.
I'm not aware of that.
Clem, could you describe, earlier, before we went on camera, you started to describe a picture in your logbook of an aircraft that, like a transport that Mountbatten had. Could you describe, you said you went along as a escort on that one time? The escort Mountbatten? Yeah, could you talk a bit about that?
Mountbatten wasn't stupid. He had his headquarters in Ceylon, the tea plantation in central Ceylon. And he was coming over to Burma to have a meeting with General Slim. And I was detailed, there were 4 of us, to meet his airplane over the Indian Ocean, escort him to the place where they were having the meeting. And I and my number 2 were up here, and the other 2 underneath. And I said, if you see us going this way, you go this way, back and forth. And I guess old Lord Louis must have been looking out of the window, because when we landed and they had the meeting, all of a sudden a Jeep pulled up where we were waiting for the thing, because we had to escort him back in case the Japs would sneak in. A Jeep pulled up and said, Lord Louis would like to meet the escort. And I told him, it was a major, I think it was driving the Jeep. He says, you get out of here, he'll have us court-martialed, because we weren't in uniform. He says, get in the damn Jeep. He says, he's the first guy to recognize him. So we went, he was very friendly. And I met him, I think I met him about 3 times. Can't remember for sure. I know he came to the squadron a couple of times. And when he came to Calgary with his daughter, Lady Birdburn, he was here at the old place here.
Lady Patricia.
A Jeep pulled up to our place of business. He said, Lord Louis would like you to come and have tea with him. I said, what the hell are you talking about? He doesn't remember me. He says, well, you met him, didn't you? And I said, yeah, but hell, that was 40-some years ago. He says, if he's met you, he remembers you. Is that possible? So anyway, we went up to the Four Seasons hotel to have tea. I was the only Air Force guy, and there was a table probably about like this here. Lord Louis was sitting there, I was sitting here, and these were Army guys here. And every once in a while, Lord Louis would make some crack about those waunchy Spitfire pilots. And after he said it about the 2nd time, I turned to him, I said, Lord Louis, if you wouldn't have had those raunchy Spitfire pilots, you'd still be wanting to win that war. He slapped he says, I grant you that.
So when did he actually sign your logbook? Do you remember that? Was that the day you said he signed your logbook?
No, not Lord Louis.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, okay.
No,
Ginger Lacey. Okay, my mistake. That's my mistake. Okay, so it's Ginger Lacey who signs it. Do you remember why? Oh, can I go back to that?
I had a letter from Lord Louis, which I can't find, because we give him a pair of snake boots,
Yeah.
which we gave the Duke and Duchess each a pair, plus Prince Charles and Andrew. So we tried to carry on the tradition. But anyway, he sent a wooden, it was a cast, I guess, they made of his foot, but it was made out of wood. and put that into the boots. We could find out what his size was. And he sent me a real nice letter, invited me to come to his estate in, I think it was Romney or someplace in England. But we never got there. And I can't find his letter anymore. Disappeared.
To switch a little bit, can you talk a little bit about the conditions of the weather and the climate that you had to deal with? Can you remember situations where, like you said, the cloud of 33,000 feet? Can you think of any other climate or weather things that...
The monsoons, but it would rain. You wouldn't believe that it could rain in that country. It just come down in sheets. And we were usually, always a wooden or a dirt runways, and we just couldn't operate until it dried up a little bit. But every runway that we took over from the Japanese would have 3 trenches dug across. It would have to be filled in, and then the ground would settle, and then especially if it rained, it would go down more. And I remember flying Ginger Lacey's. I often flew his airplane, YB-A. I flew B, he flew A, with all the German swastikas on the side. And so I dragged this thing across the trench because I knew there was a big dip there. The Canadians had dropped a whole bunch of bombs at the end of the runway. They just taxi there, throw all the bombs on a heap, and then they would take off. Here I've got no brakes. No brakes on this damn airplane. And I'm heading straight for the bomb dump. Well, there she goes. I thought the bombs would all go up, but nothing happened. But I did, the wheels touched the bottom and just went up and cracked the propeller a bit. Put a new propeller on, never damaged anything else. But at one of the Commonwealth reunions, Ginger Lacey was the honored guest in Winnipeg. That's about 15, 20 years ago. And I said to him, Ginger, why the hell didn't you tell me you didn't have brakes? Well, he said, I had some. He didn't have any. You pulled this thing and there was absolutely nothing there.
And so you talked about monsoons. Is there any other things with weather that you remember, the effects of dealing with the jungle? You said you were always in jungle airstrips. Do you remember anything else of...
You had said when it rained you didn't eat.
Well, most of the time it was okay. We'd have to, I don't know how we passed the time in the tents with all this water coming down. And we'd have tarpaulins on the airplanes. But as soon as it was fit, we'd be flying again. And it really didn't hold us up that much. The sun, it dries very quickly there with the heat. So it never was a long, drawn-out process like it is in this country.
Did you ever escort any of the the cargo planes when they did their loads and they're dumping their loads, say, in any of the battles? Do you know,
Which
the C-46, C-47s, the DC-3s, the cargo planes?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever escort the cargo planes?
Yeah, we'd fly with them because they didn't just drop stuff at our place, they dropped it at all kinds of places because it's the only transport there was for food.
So you were involved in food drops, of dropping the food drops? Anything else do you remember what they looked like or what that looked like, or
The DC-3s?
Yeah, so like, were you stationed high cover and you were looking down on them and they're,
I don't remember, we were so used to those airplanes that I remember what they looked like. I could
Yeah.
pick one out in a minute.
did you ever see any live animals dropped? No, they,
Just food.
yeah,
And usually it was mangled. We'd get a gallon cans of pilchardine. It's like a big, what's that other fish? Sardine.
Sardines.
A pilchardine is a big sardine, really. And most of the time, they wouldn't break, but they'd be pretty banged up. A lot of the food, what we really enjoyed was the Australian canned rabbit. It was our favorite food.
okay. And did you, did most of your food that you ate, was it dropped by air also?
All
All of your things were dropped by air?
Really, there were no roads. It all came.
Did you have to go out and grab that stuff? Did the pilots and everyone have to go grab that stuff out of the jungle and
Well,
off
there's
the?
pictures here of they usually dropped it on the strip.
Okay.
Here
Yep.
shows the parachutes coming down.